So, if you didn't know, earlier today, Grounded 2 launched. Now, if you didn't already know, I had been waiting for this for quite a while, and now that it is out, I have a couple of things to talk about. Whether you're here for the future of UnGrounded, for hearing about the personal experience of someone who's gone spoiler free, or if you just want to know if the game's worth buying for yourself, here is the perfect place to do so. So, first of all, I want to talk about the way the game works itself. But before I do that, just a fair warning, there will be spoilers later in this video, so if you want to stay as unspoiled as possible, I would suggest that you either stop watching now, or you you can continue watching, but I'll sort of say whenever I get into the more spoiler parts. But whenever I first booted up the game, I noticed something odd about the way the graphics worked. And because I'm on a bit of a lower end PC, technically I'm below the minimum requirements for this game, hence the reason it looks so bad. Uh, it was rendering more like an animation studio than a game. And this is, of course, always a little odd. I have noticed that the only reason I noticed it is because of course, been using this laptop for a while, but also because I use Blender for some animations, which you can find on this channel if you're interested. Uh, but I noticed it was loading in a lot more like a render for Blender, and I was like, okay, well that's not good because not only was I running at single digit FPS, I was also experiencing very like horrible graphics unless I stayed still looking in one direction. So, of course, that's no way to play a game. So, I go into the options, of course, and I go into display. Most of these options have little to no effect on the quality. Like whenever you turn down the quality, you would expect the asset quality to lower, as most games do. It doesn't. I don't know what the quality lowering does. I'm going to be honest. Quality means better performance, while higher quality means better graphics. Yeah, I have not seen an actual difference between high and low, and that, to be fair, this is an early access game. So I don't expect the entirety of this to be accessible, but why would you even put the option there if it isn't really working? Typically, I mean, with other games, it's a little different. I haven't even checked out the Grounded 1 graphic options because I could run the game perfectly fine. But, of course, I can't run this as well, so we kind of take what we can get. As you can see, if I can get to a place where I cast a shadow, oh, that's crazy. All the shadow physics. Just to not have a shadow. Risk of being attacked. I don't love that. Uh, but whenever I cast a shadow, I can like count the pixels in it. So I do, of course, have the worst possible graphics. Although even then, I think this ground is way too textured for the worst graphics. But alas, I guess it is kind of just an issue with my PC, not really an issue with the game. And that is something I plan on changing before I do any meaningful content on Grounded 2. Because I wanted to record my first ever playthrough, but once I started up the game, I noticed how bad it was already running, and I thought it was probably wise to wait to record until I either got a better PC or Obsidian Entertainment fixed some of the performance issues, which, to give them credit, they already have. There was a patch the day of release. It came out and it did fix a lot of the issues, luckily, that I was seeing. So my game is running a bit smoother, although it is still consistently in the 30 FPS range, even though I only have it locked to 60. So that's, of course, one of my biggest points. But other than that, I really have no complaints about the game. It definitely feels like quite the sequel. Sure, there are some very similar things, like, of course, the workbench, I don't think has changed at all. But that's fine. I mean, it doesn't really need to. If if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But you can definitely see that it is a little different than the original. Of course, we have the dual wielding weapons, which I personally have been enjoying a lot. I know if you've actually played the game so far, you would know I'm kind of in a weird spot for progression where my armor and gear should probably be a little better than it is. But it's fine. So, yeah, we of course have these dual wielding weapons. We have the better class system, which is actually an interesting thing because before they even announced they were using a class. Ooh, I didn't even know they could do that. Before they even announced they were using a more rigid class system than they were in the first game. Still a pretty loose class system, but more rigid than the first game. Was actually, I was thinking about putting in a loose class system for UnGrounded just so that people wouldn't be, stepping into other people's territories, especially with certain armor sets that are made from limited resources. But that's just an interesting thing I thought about. Oh, I'm about to die of hunger and thirst. That's fun. But yeah, overall, I've been enjoying the gameplay. The scorpions are definitely the new wolf spiders. I know one was sitting right up there above my base. There are a couple critiques I have, like the fact that this is the only good, what do they call them? The only good ranger outpost, at least that I've found personally. It is the only one that actually like functions well to be, because of course, the only other one I've found two so far. This is, of course, you have to find this one for the main storyline. But the other one, sure, it still existed, but it didn't have this screen here, which is kind of important because it's where you get your quests from Ominent, and the lore is something I'll be talking about later. But that's definitely a critique I have. The buggy system, I have no real complaints about. It's fun. It's interesting. I think it might end up being a little overpowered, especially when we get into flying buggies, but I trust that Obsidian will know how to balance that. I've loved seeing all the new content, whether it would be of course, the new equipment, the new creatures, the buggies, and I'm still nowhere near done with the base game as it stands in early access. So there's still a lot for me to see, but this is just first day review, and it's a really good game. I would highly suggest that if you can run it, you should buy it. If there's even a question in your mind though that you can't run it, chances are you probably can't, and that's very unfortunate. But I think they'll be improving the performance a little bit, and I'll probably make an update if they do. So, yeah, that's all the spoiler-free part. Okay, that's not fun. So, going on to the more spoiler parts. So, of course, if you don't want anything spoiled, now's the time to take off, at least until either you play the game or give up on staying spoiler-free, which I'm about to do myself. But the spoiler part, the story is honestly my favorite part of this game so far. I think so far it's definitely similar to the first game's story. It definitely feels the same. But I do think that this story is by far superior to the first one. I mean, we have Sloane here, who is a very interesting character, and it really paints the narrative very quickly that Sloane is already a questionable character. Who we're aligning ourselves with, of course, as I am in the story, of course, I'm still staying spoiler free, and I haven't finished the story yet. But where I am in the story, we're kind of with an uneasy alliance with Ominent. But the thing is, this new character, which I'm pretty sure is speculated it's the 15, and I know from the story trailer, they kind of teased the 15 at the end, possibly. And that's always been the biggest point of speculation. And while I do have to agree with that, they do make a lot of good points in those theories. It's very interesting to see the dynamic between the two factions. We have, of course, the, quote, 15 faction and Ominent. And it really paints us a picture that we might be on the wrong side of this, or maybe we're all just mixed up a little bit and nobody really knows what's going on except for maybe Ominent themselves. So that was definitely something interesting I found. Other than that, it's definitely a really good story. I like how they opened it straight off with a old character being Burgle in distress. That's a really good way to start off something, especially a sequel, having somebody in distress. So that's, of course, a nice, like, driving factor. It's a nice motivation for our characters. It is also interesting that Ominent seems to be helping us out, but not as much as they can. And I could do an hour of speculation. I might actually do a theory video on this game once I finish through the storyline. But I've definitely found that all interesting. So, if you do want to play Grounded 2, I would highly suggest you do. And news about UnGrounded 2. So, I know UnGrounded was, of course, my series. It was a lead-up event to this game, and it's here now, and I don't have all the UnGrounded episodes published, but I'm not going to publish anymore because I had to delete all the footage to install this game. So that kind of sucks. And also, you know, the game was already out. I know Grounded 1 momentum would die down pretty quickly after the release of this game, so unless there's an overwhelming pool for me to actually go and follow up with episode, I think it was either 7 or 8 of UnGrounded, I most likely won't be. But UnGrounded 2 is definitely a possibility. I, of course, have been playing the game, kind of scoping out how UnGrounded 2 might work. And I think it definitely will. The only problem is, of course, I might need a better laptop or just a computer in general, or they have to optimize it. We do have to account for the fact that this is the explorable area currently, and they said it was about the size of the yard. And personally, while I feel it might honestly be bigger, and even if it isn't actually bigger, it definitely is filled with a lot more variety than the first game was, at least in my opinion. But once we access the rest of this map, which looks a lot more, they said the whole map was going to be 3 times the size of the grounded map, and we were getting a third of it at launch. This feels a bit larger than 3 times. It feels more maybe like 4 times the size of the original map from Grounded, but that is all to be seen in the future. But for now, you can, of course, stay tuned for more UnGrounded news. Hopefully we'll be getting that. Of course, we do have a couple members who won't be able to make the transfer from UnGrounded 1 to UnGrounded 2, at least not yet, either with their device capability or with just running the game in general is relatively hard. We also have to deal with a bunch of logistics on how we're actually going to make it work. But trust me, it is definitely in my mind, and I am working at hopefully getting that up. Not as soon as possible, but definitely soon. So, if you did enjoy the video, and if you did make it this far, please consider liking and subscribing. I didn't put a lot of work into this video. This is just a cold record. But I do put a lot of work into most of the other videos I make. And you might be expecting a lot more content from the rest of the members of Chaos Coast soon, as they seem to be working on their own projects. So, you can look forward to more of Grounded content, more of UnGrounded content, and you can also look forward to content for other games and from other members of Chaos Coast. So, with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.